Hey, Cookies here. This is an updated Dispriest ramp guide. So we're going to go over some of the topics that we went over in the first video, but I'm going to clarify some points that I either missed or looked over, and then we're going to talk about some other topics that I completely just didn't cover in that video. Before we get started, please make sure you like and subscribe if you like the content. Come stop by the community Discord if you have any questions or would like to get, personal help from me. My DMs are always open. You can message me anytime. And be sure to stop by the stream and say hey when I'm raiding or doing Mythic Plus and whatnot, and that's all down in the description down below. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So first we're going to talk about just the typical ramp, and this is what we talked about in the first video, but we're going to go through it again and reiterate on some points that I missed on and talk about some of the important stuff. So first off, we have what we're used to, which is the ramp, what the spells are going to look like when we're ramping, which is going to be applying anywhere from about 6 to 9 atonements out onto the raid, and then using radiance, using all our cooldowns, all these things. So we'll kind of walk through a VOD and we will show what a ramp looks like. So this is where we start ramping. We go ahead and start with it should always start with a Shadow Mend into a Power Word Shield, but we'll forego that for now just for the sake of simplicity. So we have 1 atonement, 2 atonement, and you can see that the atonements are marked by these little pink icons at the top right of the raid frame, just so that you know. We have 3 atonement, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and now we're going to radiance, refresh our dot on the boss, radiance again, and then we go into our cooldowns by pressing Spirit Shell, we Schism, we Mind Games, we Mind Blast, we Penance. And then we spam Smite until all the atonements are gone. We're just going to keep pressing Smite until we literally see every atonement gone, and then we refresh our atonements on the tank, and that is our ramp. So we'll go over that one more time, and you can slow it down or rewind if you need to. So we go into our ramp, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and actually, did I get 9? Or I only got 8, sorry, I miscounted. So we'll go ahead and just go back really quick just so I can recount those since I messed that up, my bad. So, going to the ramp here. Apologies for that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and Radiance. Refresh our dot on the boss, Radiance again, and Pop Spirit Shell, Mindbender, Schism, Mind Games, Mind Blast, Penance, Spam Smite. And that is our ramp. And to just look at it through another perspective, we'll go ahead and go over here to a log really quick. And we will go to our cast here. Go to Soul Kitchen, we'll go to Radiance, and we'll go to Spirit Shell and Mindbender. And then all we're going to do is just zoom into one of these and look at it ourselves. We'll go ahead and look at the second one. This one at 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Okay, so we'll go ahead and actually zoom that out just a little bit more because I think we're missing a couple things. We'll look at it like that, and then we'll go ahead and go to the cast timeline. We'll scroll down, and so here's the ramp. So we have our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 atonements. We have our radiance. We have our refresh the dot on the boss. We have our second radiance, which should target someone that doesn't have an atonement. We press our macro that uses Spirit Shell and Mindbender together. And then we use Schism, Mind Games, Mind Blast, Penance. And then we go ahead and spam Smite until all of our atonements are gone. And that's what a ramp should look like. And now let's go ahead and talk about some different points. So here at the start of the ramp, you should always start with a Shadow Mend. So this should actually be a Shadow Mend into Power Word Shield. And the only reason we really do that is because then you're casting that Shadow Mend, and by the time the cast is finished, it resets your GCD, and it just makes it to where you essentially get a little bit of extra time, a good second and a half extra time on that first atonement that you apply. So it is very important to start with a Shadow Mend, and then let's also talk about some other things. So why do we refresh our dot here? For one, if we put our dot somewhere back here, it's going to fall off by the time that we get to around here. And the worst thing you want is to refresh your dot while you're in this window right here. We want that dot damage rolling into our cooldowns, so we refresh it in between radiances. And then also there's the added benefit that we get to refresh this dot so that we don't accidentally radiance someone who gets an atonement from the first radiance. So it allows us to see who gets hit by the radiance while we refresh our dot, and then we can target someone who has not been hit by the radiance, hit them with the second one, and then we pop our Spirit Shell and Mindbender together always. We Schism, we Mind Games, we Mind Blast, we Penance. If we're not Venthyr and we don't have Mind Games, you just literally remove this from the equation and you just go Schism into Mind Blast, into Penance, into Spam Smite. And there is no real differences. So that is how we look at a ramp visually. And now we'll go ahead and go back to here and talk about some other things. So when should we be ramping? We should be ramping, if I actually go here, we can actually look at this. We should be ramping, typically, the goal is to press Spirit Shell about 10 seconds before the damage hits the raid. Whatever we're trying to heal or whatever we're trying to do, we want to press Spirit Shell 10 seconds, just about. It doesn't have to be perfect, but about 10 seconds before that damage hits the raid. So, the way we accomplish this is, it's going to depend on your haste levels, and you should experiment with this, but you should figure out what works for you in practice and just see, how different timings are working. But usually aiming for about starting your ramp, pressing that first Shadow Mend into Power Word Shield at about 25 to 20 seconds before the incoming damage happens should just about work for you, because it's going to take, again, depending on your haste levels, anywhere from about 10 to 15 seconds to get a ramp going and finish that ramp and press Spirit Shell. So now, how do we ramp without Spirit Shell available, right? So we'll go ahead and close this out, and I have another clip to bring up. So how are we going to ramp without Spirit Shell? What do we do in the downtime? And what we're going to do here is, you can see this is me finishing a ramp, pressing our DPS cooldowns, and now we have another minute before Spirit Shell is active, and obviously the raid's going to take some damage. So what do we do in the downtime? So we're going to go out here. This is what we ramped for. We ramped for this expunge, and now we're going to go back in, and you're going to see me do we'll just call it a mini ramp. And what this is essentially applying a similar amount of atonements. You're going to apply about 4 to 6 atonements. It doesn't have to be a very specific number. You can play around and see what you like using the best. And then you're just using 1 Radiance charge, and then you're refreshing your dot on the boss, and then you're doing the Schism, Mind Blast, Penance combo. But you won't be using Mind Games because it won't be active, because you need to save that for your cooldowns. And you won't use that second Radiance charge because we want to save it again. We want 2 Radiances for every Mind Blast, or every Spirit Shell. Excuse me. So here you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, and a Shadow Mend to apply a 5, 6, which is a little bit incorrect, but that's okay. And then we just throw out a Radiance. Boss does damage to the raid here in a moment, and now we're just pushing damage and Schism and Mind Blast and Penance and whatnot. And you could say that this ramp was definitely early. I should have done it right here. I should have done the mini ramp, because you're essentially not applying shields like you would be with Spirit Shell. You're actually needing to heal with this ramp. So understanding when that's a good time to do so. But essentially, the way the pattern's going to look, and we can look at logs again for this. So we'll go to my cast here, and we'll go to Radiance, and we'll go to Spirit Shell, and we'll go to Mindbender. And now we can reset this zoom. And if we look at the entire fight, you can see this pattern, and this is clarified in the first video, but we'll just go over it again. This pattern you always want to follow. You always want this kind of 1-2, 1-2 combo. So you see I have 1 Radiance here. This is a mini ramp, or I have 2 right here at the start of the fight. And then it's going to go 2 again. That's my big ramp with my cooldowns. And then just a single Radiance with nothing. 2 Radiances with my cooldowns. 1 Radiance with nothing. 2 Radiance with a cooldown. 1 Radiance with nothing. 2 with a cooldown, etc., etc. It should almost always strictly follow this guideline of 2-1, 2-1 Radiances used. And that's because Radiance comes back off cooldown right here. So if you just hold Radiance this entire time, you're just missing out on a free Radiance that you could literally just throw out. It doesn't cost that much mana, and it just lets you do healing to the raid. So it's always beneficial to do this. And again, we want to kind of follow that up with a few atonements most of the time, just to help give us a little bit of extra kind of oomph to the radiance that we use. And then we can also use Schism and Mind Blast and Penance with that, because those cooldowns are also short enough to be up for when we need them. As long as everything is up for the double Radiance and the Spirit Shell combo, we can use that, that Radiance and that Schism and things like that. And then lastly, how do we conserve mana? So obviously in these fights, we're going to want to conserve mana, right? So for instance, on this fight, we can go to my resources here, and we can go ahead and look at mana. And this is my mana throughout the fight. I did happen to have a couple Innervates given to me, so that is obviously going to help a decent amount with mana. But essentially, the way that conserving mana works as a Disc Priest is you really just want to lay back on the atonements and do not press Mind Blast, do not press Radiance, don't press these abilities that are going to cost you a decent amount of mana. So when this downtime is happening is in large gaps like this, or here, like it's in between those double and single radiances is when you're having this downtime. So the way you are in downtime is you have 1 to 4 active atonements. That's the easiest way I like to think about it, is your downtime or your like mana conservation is whenever you're trying to save mana is when you have about 1 to 4 atonements. This is typically on tanks, and then on any like debuffed players or players who have any like, hard-hitting damage over time effects and stuff on them in boss fights, or you just have it on the tanks. You just have 1 to 4 atonements out. You don't use Radiance, you don't use Mind Blast, and you only Smite and Penance. And you also refresh your dot, because refreshing your dot is pretty much free, and it's definitely worth it. But you don't use Mind Blast. Mind Blast is a big mana spender, so you do not want to use it. Even in these mini ramps, you should only be using Mind Blast if you really need the healing out of it, and you're not afraid of running out of mana. So that is how you conserve mana, that is how you do a mini ramp, that is how you do a big ramp. Again, stop by the Discord, say hey, ask me questions, DM me if you want some more help, or want to go over logs yourself with me, and stop by the stream and say hello. And besides that, I hope this was useful. I hope that this updated guide helps you guys clarify some things that I missed. I definitely missed out on the first video, because I know the first video was really helpful, but obviously there was a bunch of things that I missed. And yeah, so lots of content incoming. Thank you guys so much for the support. I cannot thank you enough. It means a lot to just get so many DMs on Discord and people messaging me or jumping in the stream and saying, hey, this, your guides are helping me out so much. I'm doing really well in the guild I'm raiding with, or anything like that. So love you guys. You guys are all awesome. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good one.